What is up, guys? It's Doodoo Poker here, back with another video. Today we are going to be looking at two hand histories where the player profile dictates our decision on the river. So in the first hand, I'm going to be versus a fish, and I am in the big blind. My opponent is on the button, and he RFIs pre-flop. I call, so I have 7 of spades, 7 of hearts. The flop comes king of spades, 8 of spades, 6 of spades. Let's follow along in GTO Wizard. So he RFIs, I call, king of spades, 8 of spades, 6 of spades. Now we know in theory you mostly go small here. But my opponent, who is a fish, decides to go bigger. He goes 122 into 150, so a little over 80%. So let's follow along here. Let's say 75% to keep it solver friendly. And we know it's always a call with our 7 of spades, 7 of hearts. So we call flop. Now on the turn, a deuce of diamonds comes, and my opponent bets again. Now this time, he bets 275 into 394, which is almost 75%. So let's follow along here. Deuce of diamonds on the turn. My opponent, who's a fish, bets again. And now the only play we have is to call. So we call again. Now the river is the important point. The river comes a king of clubs. And my opponent, who is a fish, bets 954 into 944. So he overbets river. Now, I think most people would end up folding here, but we have to understand MDA in this spot. Now, let's look at Reg MDA just to take a peek, and then we're going to compare it to Fish MDA. So if my opponent was a Reg, let's look at bet for a monotone board. We see if he bets 70 on the flop, the aggregate is 29 weak in the triple barrel line for regulars. But if we go to filters, we see monotone board on the flop is 19 weak. So that means in the triple barrel line, the monotone board is 10% stronger than the aggregate. That means if we're against a reg, we should always fold here. Because, let's go take a peek at a solver, and he went, let's say he went 85, even though he went a little over 100. And we know 7 of spades, 7x is always a fold. Slight calling. Let's see what the EV losses of calling. Okay, so it's a 1.5 big blind mistake to call. But this is just theoretical. We have to remember we're against a fish. And what do fish not understand? Fish do not understand board texture. So let's take a peek at MDA from fish for the triple barrel line. What do we notice? This is the field as single raise pot in position pre-flop razor button versus big blind bet. You notice the bigger their c-bet on the flop, the weaker their range is. This is really important, guys. The bigger they c-bet on the flop, if they bet 70 or bet 100, they are weaker. So we know this in game, and we also know it's over bluffed. So what we do here is we always call versus a fish, but if he was a reg, we would always fold. So knowing if our opponent is a fish or a reg determines our river call. Okay, let's take another hand. Another hand in this spot where I have Jack 4 of diamonds, and I'm in the big blind. Now here, my opponent is a reg. He RFIs pre-flop. Let's go to the solver first. He RFIs pre-flop. We'll go back to button versus big blind. He RFIs. I have Jack 4 of diamonds. I call. The flop comes king of spades, 10 of diamonds, 4 clubs. Now my opponent, who is a reg, bets flop 50%. Nothing else to do but call. So let's follow along here. He bets flop 50%. And I call, and I pick up a flush draw on the turn. So I have Jack 4 of diamonds. I have a pair of 4s and a flush draw. Now on the turn, a common reg sizing, which my opponent does, is he overbets turn. He bets 3. Let's see what he bets. He bets 325 into 268. So nothing else for me to do except call. Let's say he bet 125%. And I have my Jack 4 of diamonds. I have my pair. I have my flush draw. And I always call. Now the river is again a very important point. On the river, a queen of spades comes. Okay? So queen of spades on the river. And now again, my opponent bets. But on the flop, he bet 50%. On the turn, he overbet. Now on the river, let's look at his sizing. He bets 459 into 918. Now let's do the math on that real quick. And we see 459 divided by 918. He goes 50%. So what should we do with our Jack 4 of diamonds? Well, I think most people would just fold here and not think anything of it. Let's see what a solver does. Well, a solver, let's say it goes 60. A solver is going to always fold. Why is a solver folding Jack 4 of diamonds? We have to understand the theory before we understand the MDA. The reason Jack 4 of diamonds is always folding is because we block bluffs. That means we block the folding range if we raise. Because button is supposed to bluff a hand like Jack 8 of diamonds, Jack 7 of diamonds, Jack 6 of diamonds, Jack 5 of diamonds. So we're blocking the folds. That's why Jack 4 of diamonds does that. But this player is weak. He has a 43 one-win soft flop over 3.2k hands. He is a weak player. So how do we exploit weak players? Well, when he sizes down on the river, he is telegraphing his hand strength. We know he probably doesn't have a very strong hand because he went overbet on the turn, and then when the third Broadway came, he went smaller. So how do I exploit this player? What I should do is turn my hand into a bluff and jam all in. This will ensure us of a positive EV value play because of his weak one-win soft flop. The way to exploit the weaker regulars is to put them in tough decisions on the river. So let's do a summary of these two spots. So in the first hand, when we called down on the monotone board, we would fold versus a reg because if you look at data on monotone boards, it's 19 weak and the aggregate is 29 weak. So it's under bluffed. So we would fold versus a reg, but we know from data from the fish, it's over bluffed because he bet 70 on the flop. So it's even more over bluffed than the other c-bet sizings. In the second hand, we attack the weak reg on the river because he sized down. So because he has a low one-win soft flop, we turn our hand into a bluff on the river, even though it's not theory approved because it's blocking some folds. My opponent likely doesn't have those hands in his range anyways, so we can make a profitable all-in bluff. If you enjoyed this, please give me a like, please give me a subscribe. New video every single day, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.